setting the stage for your Georgia Saturday. This is DawgNation Game Day. Brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors, Kroger, and R.S. Andrews. Now live from Jittery Joes in Athens, here's your host.
For the
Kaylee
first
Mansell.
time in the Kirby Smart era, a matchup between Georgia and Alabama will take place on this field today. 10 years in the making, and the biggest advantage lies with you, DawgNation, the fans. Welcome into DawgNation Game Day. I am Kaylee Mansell, and usually this is the part where I try to hype you up for a cupcake match, but I don't need to do that today. You know what this game means. You know the feelings that come along with it, the stakes that are involved. I don't have to tell you what it is. You already know. And today, we're going to see if Georgia can finally slay the dragon that is Alabama. Not only is Georgia looking to improve its SEC record and get over that Alabama hump, but perhaps most importantly, continue that home streak record still within the NCAA. And we know it means a lot to the players. It means a lot to the fans. But don't take it from me. Take it from Georgia tight end Oscar Delp.
It's a huge one. We want to win this game. I mean, the SEC runs through Georgia and Alabama since I've grown up. So being able to just be a part of this game at home with the home winning streak that we have, I mean, I want to keep that alive, and I want to, just play Georgia football this weekend.
You mentioned the home winning streak. How much, if any, is that brought up between you guys?
I mean, I think it gets brought up about pretty much every home game we have. I mean, we don't focus on it too much, but everyone knows, I mean, you don't lose at home at Georgia. So, I mean, that's the standard, and we want to uphold that.
You don't lose at home at Georgia. Everyone knows the standard is the standard, and so far the standard for this team under Kirby Smart has been 17-0 in night games. It's the perfect opportunity to finally have Georgia's moment in Sanford Stadium at night. It feels like all the cards are lined up in place for Georgia to finally take this win. It's going to be a lot, and I'm hoping that we can help navigate this today with our pregame show. I'll show you what we've got going on today's DawgNation Game Day. Starting with, we're going to take a look back at what the narrative of Georgia having an Alabama problem is. Again, I don't want to do it, but you know when this game rolls around, the graphics show up, so we're going to take a look back at it. We'll also take a deep dive into Alabama and why this year's team seems to not have that typical Alabama image. We're also going to hear from Mike Griffith on how things can change with the return of two important Tide players, as well as what each team must do to win. Also, I'm so excited. We're going to have special guest Rodrigo Blankenship. He's going to join the show and help me set the tone of this game and what he wants to see out of the Dogs today. Then he's also going to stick around for my Mansell's matchup to watch. This is perhaps my favorite one that I've done so far. Can't wait to get to that. We're also going to hear from Jeff Sentell. He has the most important visitors for today's game and why Noah Thomas could still be an important part of this team. We're also going to do my players to watch for the day. The theme for this one is the players where it feels like today could be their moment. We're going to have some behind-the-scenes footage with Cody Chaffins as well. And then Connor Riley's going to join us live from Sanford Stadium, tell us what the atmosphere is looking like. We'll also talk about the offensive line. And then, of course, we're going to wrap up with my keys to the game. And we've got a terrific hype video to show you if you haven't seen it so far. But first, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. You know the storylines. Kirby Smart versus Alabama. It's been one of the more unsuccessful rivalries that he's had within the SEC. Conquered and dominated all of the other ones, including Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, and Auburn. But it's the struggles against Bama that seem to continue to happen. Alabama holds the all-time series record even before the Kirby Smart era began, but you know Kirby Smart is 1-6 against the Crimson Tide. However, this game has never been played in Athens, all of them either neutral site or at Alabama. And also, too, when you look at last year's matchup, the record of 28 consecutive regular season games ended at Alabama last year. But it's more than just the losses. It's how they've played out, and we know that the only time that they did get that win was over Alabama in the 2021 national championship after losing to them in the SEC championship. And I don't know that the stigma of Kirby Smart having an Alabama problem goes away with the game today, even if they are able to get the win. However, you can't begin to change the narrative if you don't start with today. And with this being a home game, there's no excuse to come out on the wrong side of it. So we trust in Kirby Smart. We know how much this game means to him, the players, and the fans. And hopefully after today, it'll be a nice 2-6 and no longer that 1-6. Now, of course, with this show, we've got to talk about things from the Alabama perspective too. And I went back and watched that Florida State game, and looking at some of the stats, at least for me, I've noticed that there are two completely different versions to this Alabama team. It seems like what they're really good at, they're at the top of the charts, but what they're bad at is also concerning, which is maybe why this Alabama team feels different. Obviously, the shocking loss to Florida State to start the year, they've looked like a more complete and polished version of themselves in their following 2 games, but also, too, with the level of competition, it's hard to get a gauge on just how much they've improved. We'll show you this on the screen here. We're going to title this The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So here's what they do well, especially in the last 2 games. Second in the SEC for passing yards per game. Also, Ty Simpson second in the SEC for completion percentage. Their pass defense is really, really strong, only allowing 108 passing yards per game, which is first in the SEC. Also, 0 turnovers on the year. And for Ty Simpson specifically, these last 2 games has looked like a way better quarterback, has not thrown an interception all year, and he's helped the Tide in all of these passing categories. And you don't have to take it from me. Kirby Smart knows this as well. I thought he did a really good job of his evaluation in Ty Simpson. So here's Kirby from Monday.
Ty's different than Milroe. You said it. So there's a difference in that. But he's a really good athlete. Like, he's a tremendous athlete. He played in games last year, and you watch all the snaps he took, and he has 60, 70, 80-yard runs that are, running down the field, outrunning good defenses. So he's a talented player. I would say he's probably the hottest quarterback right now in all of college football. His 2 last outings, I don't know that I've seen an incompletion. Like, the ball does not hit the ground. He's been accurate. He's been quick with the ball. They're really hard to defend because of their skill. They've got tremendous skilled receivers, backs, tight ends, but you got to have a trigger guy that can get those guys the ball, and they do.
And as he said there, also didn't have a single incompletion in their second game versus Louisiana Monroe. I think when it comes to Ty Simpson, as a former 5-star quarterback, it's obvious that the natural talent is there, but this is by far going to be the biggest test that he's had all season. He's going to face the best defense that he has all season too. So for me, the question is Ty Simpson really that good? I think we're going to learn more about him today, but definitely have seen improvements through these first 3 games. It's going to be another challenging test for the Georgia secondary. Now, on the other hand, we got to go back to the bad. And this is where Alabama maybe feels like it's lacking this year in terms of that typical Alabama look that they have where they dominate in all aspects of the game. It seems like they really struggle in 2 areas that Kirby Smart has put a lot of emphasis on for this Dogs team, and that's running the ball and stopping the run. Only 123.6 rushing yards per game, which is 13th in the SEC, allowing over 138 rushing yards per game, which is 12th. Also, the penalties have been an issue this far. I think this is where home field advantage really comes into play because we see how many penalties they have per game, and Brett Thorson said earlier this week that a couple of false starts could make the difference. Also, I thought this was really interesting. They are last in the SEC for 3rd down conversions allowed, so 46.3% of the time they're allowing other teams to convert on 3rd down. Georgia's been great on 3rd down this season so far. Now, when it comes to the rushing stats that we see there, where Alabama is severely lacking, they do get Jam Miller back today. It'll be his first game. Coming back from a collarbone injury, you can see that his absence has made a really big difference, which is also why they've had to lean more on that pass game. And we don't know where he is at in terms of that recovery. That's a really hard injury to come back from. But also the preparation standpoint from Georgia becomes harder because how do you prepare for a team that you haven't seen the fullest extent of them this far? That's something that we'll actually talk about with Mike Griffith here in just a moment. But when it comes to the Tide, feels like a very different version of what we've seen from them in the past, but based on that, we know what they do well. We know what they struggle in. Georgia can attack some of those weaknesses, but also, too, this is going to be a very different Tide team today with the additions of Jam Miller as well as defensive lineman Tim Keaton. So in just a minute, we'll talk to Mike Griffith. He'll have all of that information for us, as well as what he wants to see out of the Dogs today and what he thinks it takes for them to win. But first, I'm so excited to be back at home after going on the road because that means we get to be at Jittery Joes, and this is by far my favorite location that we've ever done pregame at. It's been absolutely popping in here today. I know that Kirby Smart said that the fans had more time to get prepared during night games, and I think a few people had to stop in here along the way to maybe delay some of that preparation, but it's really just such an amazing place to be each Saturday that we get to be in Athens, and I hope one day that if you get to come to a game, you'll come join us. We always start 2 hours before game time. Stop in, get a coffee, come talk to me, and just get to talk some Dogs football. And even if you can't be here in Athens on a Saturday with us, they have so many locations all around the state of Georgia, so you can stop by. And a good tip is to download their Jittery Joes app, and if you do that, you'll get money off of your first purchase, as well as be able to skip the line, which if you were here today, you would have definitely needed that. And you can also order all of their commemorative cans online, as well as a lot of their different roasts. So to find out more, go to jitteryjoes.com. Again, that's jitteryjoes.com. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and hear from DawgNation insider Mike Griffith on his thoughts about tonight's matchup. So we welcome in Mike Griffith. I thought that you did an excellent job in your On the Beat show that takes place on Mondays, previewing what Georgia fans need to know about Alabama. And I wanted to extend on one of the things that you discussed, which is this week Alabama is getting back for the first time their running back Jam Miller, as well as their defensive lineman Tim Keenan. What do these guys bring to the Alabama team? And if you're Georgia, how do you prepare for a squad that you haven't seen their fullest extent so far?
Well, I think number one, they bring leadership. You know, these are both senior players. These are both veterans. I think that that's the biggest thing that they bring to this game, and on the road, under the lights, I don't think you can undervalue that. Now, as far as what they bring from a practical standpoint, I've got my questions. I mean, Jam Miller had a collarbone issue. That's a pretty serious injury for a running back when you think about the contact and the style of runner he is, a 221, tough guy. That's a tough injury if there are any lingering effects. I'm not a doctor. I didn't do the exam, but there's a part of me that thinks first game back, there could be a hand on a hot stove effect. And I do expect this to be a very physical game. So from that standpoint, as far as Keenan, we've been down this road with tightrope surgery. We saw Brock Bowers have it. We saw Tate Ratledge last year. When these guys came back, they were not 100%. They did not look like the same player. Now, Keenan is a warrior. He's a nose tackle. He fills gaps. But still, I have questions as to his efficiency. And, you know, Kaylee, one of the interesting things when I do parallels, you think about last year's game, you know, ETN had hurt his shoulder against Kentucky. He had 2 weeks to return, but I didn't think that it was the same Trevor Etienne we saw against Texas when he played in Tuscaloosa. Granted, he had 55 yards rushing, but he didn't appear quite as dynamic. So I look at that. And then Michael Williams, remember, he tried to play coming off an ankle injury. Now, not tightrope surgery, but still sort of the same thing. Wasn't 100%, didn't even log a tackle against Alabama. So that's my reason for the skepticism. Also, one more reason when you're wondering what happened to Georgia last year in Tuscaloosa, those were 2 pretty key guys that weren't full steam for the Bulldogs.
So you bring up the game from last year, and one thing that I've been putting together is even though they only played a year ago, both have new quarterbacks. It feels like they're entirely different teams from where they were at then, and so I feel like there's different strengths and different weaknesses as opposed to what we saw last year. So for the 2 teams this year, for both Alabama and Georgia, what's the key to victory for both?
Well, Ty Simpson has mobility, but he's not Jalen Milroe. He's a much more accurate passer, though, and that's dangerous when you look at the weapons that Alabama has. Against Tennessee, Joey Aguilar absolutely lit up Kirby Smart's defense. There's no way around it. I mean, the guy threw for over 370 yards and 4 touchdowns. Part of the problem was that Georgia did not get a pass rush. They did not hit Joey Aguilar except when he tried to run it and got lit up by Raylan Wilson in the open field. That was really the only substantial hit that I saw him take in the open field. They might have hit him after a throw or two, but they didn't really affect his play. I think for Alabama to win this game, they've got to keep Ty Simpson upright. I think they have to protect their quarterback. Alabama's not turned the ball over this year. I think that's a big factor. So I would say the 2 things for Alabama are to protect Ty Simpson and to avoid turnovers. Conversely, for Georgia, the Bulldogs, we know this, and Kirby Smart told us this from the jump, they have to find some semblance of a run game in order to get their offense in full motion. Gunnar Stockton is a very good quarterback, but he's not a guy that's going to stand in the pocket and throw it 36 times and beat you without the help of a run game. The run game does two things. One, it keeps you on schedule, so you're not behind the chains. When we think about Gunnar Stockton's failings, we think about strip sacks. It happened against Tennessee and led to a Tennessee field goal. And we all remember what happened against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. So I think that the Georgia run game is very important. I think first and foremost, that's what they have to do is they do need to have some success running the ball on first and second down. I know fans don't always like that. It looks boring, predictable, but if we flash back to the Tennessee game, the Dogs really took control there in the third quarter with the run game. 13 out of 14 plays on their opening drive, the second half run plays as they went down the field and scored. So I think running the ball is very important. And just as I said, Alabama has to avoid turnovers. Georgia has to create turnovers and momentum plays. So I'm going to throw special teams in there. I think big moments under the lights make a difference. I think momentum's a big part of it. I also think it keeps the crowd in the game. And when I think of two of the greatest games that I've seen in Stanford Stadium over the last 8 years, Notre Dame 2019, red light LEDs made its debut. Fans went crazy. There were 6 Notre Dame motion penalties. And then I think of the 2022 game when number 1 Tennessee, per the College Football Playoff Committee, played number 1 Georgia from the AP Top 25 in the coaches poll and had 5 motion penalties in the first half alone. The stadium is going to show out. The Dogs have to give them something to root for. So turnovers, momentum changing plays for the Dogs, and the ability to run the ball effectively.
So it is no secret that there's a lot of storylines, emotions, and feelings that come with this game for both sides. When you look at Georgia and Kirby Smart just 1-6 against Alabama, the only game that he has won in his time was the national championship. But also now for Alabama, all of Kalen DeBoer's losses have come from when they've been away from Bryant-Denny Stadium. So it's a little bit different this year. Which team do you think is under more pressure to win this game?
Well, there's 2 layers to this. So locally, certainly Kirby Smart in Georgia because of that 1-6 record. And, you know, the fan base has desired to see a regular season win over Alabama and over a new head coach, especially after what happened last year. I mean, you know, the Dogs come all the way back and then Alabama steals it in the final moments with a big pass. So from a local standpoint, from, you know, within the fan base, all that emotional mumbo jumbo, Kirby Smart's legacy, you'd say Georgia, but really from 10,000 feet, it's Alabama, and that's not a question. They've already got 1 loss. They really can't afford a second loss. 3 losses, it really puts their playoff, you know, hopes on the ropes, and they still have to play Tennessee and Auburn and some other really good football teams. Georgia can afford to lose this game in terms of being a college football playoff team. And I hate to say it, but this is where we're at with college football now, Kaylee. We got to look at, you know, who's going to make the playoff. So I would say Kalen DeBoer's future is also in question. This is a really good football coach, but he's inherited a really difficult situation in this NIL portal era. I don't even, you know, a lot of people second guessing Kalen DeBoer. I said, well, what would Nick Saban do without Caleb Downs and Julian Sain and Justice Haynes? I mean, he's not dealt the same hand as Nick Saban, much less trying to change the culture. So because of the uncertainty that would be in Kalen DeBoer's future, if he loses this game, because it would be a second loss for an Alabama team with college football aspirations, an objective point of view suggests that Alabama has more to lose.
And this is why we bring you on, because I feel like from the inside, it's easy to say, well, it's Georgia. They need to slay the dragon. But like you said, from the 10,000-foot view on the outside looking in, I do believe that Alabama is the team under more pressure to win this game and kind of get back to the place they were in the minds of the national media. So, Mike, we always appreciate your insight and appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, Kaylee. Have a good one.
All right, so we can always count on Mike Griffith to keep it real with us, and then he keeps it real every Monday night, 7 o'clock on the beat. I'll actually be joining him on Monday, so hopefully we'll be discussing good things out of a Georgia win tonight, hopefully. Now, this part I've been so excited for because I haven't had the chance to meet you in person yet. I know that 14-year-old me who used to scream at the TV watching Georgia games is like dying inside right now, and I do feel like in honor of you being here, I have to get on your level because you made champagne glasses cool. So just
go.
for now, we're going to bring them out. But I just want to say thank you for stopping by and joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, and I'm excited to talk about the Dogs today.
So I know how nervous I feel in this moment right now for this game. I can't even imagine what the players are feeling, especially with this being a night game. You have to wait so long to finally have that kickoff moment. What's that like from the player perspective, just having to wait on a game of this magnitude, and especially being played at night as well?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved night games at the University of Georgia. It took me back to high school roots. Friday night lights, the sun's going down, the fans are coming in to fill in the stands. And so I just always loved playing at night. I always also really appreciated getting to sleep in late, because when you have those early kickoff times, you got to wake up bright and early. But when you have a 7:30 kickoff, you get to sleep in a little bit later. You get that food in you. You get some time to really prepare and really lock in mentally. Obviously, a game of this magnitude, I'm sure that the guys are going to be ready to go. They've had all this time, all this anticipation, especially coming off of a work week. You have double the time to prepare. So I'm sure that the guys are going to be locked and loaded and ready to go. But I always love the night games, and I'm sure plenty of these guys too, because it's going to be an incredible environment tonight.
So Alabama, not really a traditional rival of Georgia, and one thing that Kirby Smart pointed out to us over the summer is that 54% of these players are in their first or second year, so may not understand the pressure that comes with this game. But as a player, did you feel that when you guys played Alabama?
I do think that it was a little bit different, even if some of my fellow teammates that we played, when we played against Alabama when I was there, they may not say the same thing, but I do think that for whatever reason, it just felt a little bit different. I think that, at the time that I was coming through, Alabama was still the standard in college football, and everyone looked to them, and so, they're the ones that have a bullseye on their back every single week. I think that Coach Smart has done a tremendous job in kind of putting Georgia in that position, and it feels like when someone rolls into town, Georgia has the bullseye on their back, and everyone's hunting them, and they're going to get everybody's best shot. But at the time that I was there, I think that Bama was still in that position. And so for us, we buckled our chin straps a little bit tighter. We tied up our shoes with just a little bit more care, because we knew that we were playing the Tide, and we had to bring our best when we stepped out on that field against them. So I do think it was a little bit different. But I think now you've got some new faces in there, and these guys are used to winning, and I think that they also understand that Georgia is the standard right now. So hopefully they come in with the mentality that they are the standard, and it's going to be their game to lose. And I think if they come out and execute like we think that they can, then we're going to be just fine tonight.
So going back and watching your post-game appearance after the Tennessee game, I think Braden asked if there was a game that matched the level of thrillness that Georgia and Tennessee was, and you said that you would categorize Alabama-Georgia last year as one of those games. Do you think that we're going to see another thriller tonight?
Unfortunately, I do think we're going to be in for a show. And, last week with Tennessee, everyone's putting up points. Everyone's throwing haymakers left and right, very similar to last year with the Alabama game. And I do think that we're going to be in for, unfortunately, another shootout. So I hope that everyone, gets their popcorn, gets their sodas, and is going to be locked into their seats from start to finish, because I think that we're going to be in for a classic matchup tonight.
Mike Griffith, one of the things that he said, he thought special teams was going to play a big role tonight. Just from the Alabama perspective, their kicker, punter, and their long snapper all new this year for the first time in a really long time. How much of an impact does that really make in a game like today?
I think it could have a huge impact. I do think that there is a little bit of an advantage to having your specialists be returning players. We have Peyton Woodring, we have Brett Thorson coming back, and Bo Gardner. Brett Thorson making his season debut against Tennessee, and it was great to see him, get the pigskins flying again.
Yeah.
But those guys have a lot of chemistry. They spend practice and meetings together, every day for the season, and then in the off season as well. So I do think that there is a little bit of an advantage to having your specialists coming back. But a program like Alabama, they're going to make sure that they have high quality specialists in there as well. Now I think that this game, you've got a lot of pressure. It's going to be big stakes. I don't really think that special teams has made a super big impact in any of Alabama's games. When they were playing against Florida State, the game was out of hand pretty early. And then in their last couple games, they haven't really had a very close game. They were taking over and dominating the game the last 2 weeks. So I think that this is the first time that their specialists could really be put into some high-pressure situations. And I have all the trust in the world that if it's going to come down to special teams, I'm going to take our guys every day.
So similar to last year, both Georgia and Bama come into this game off of a bye week. And looking back on some of the bye weeks that y'all had, I feel like there's a stigma of maybe it helps, it could also hurt and swing some momentum. So, what do you work on during those bye weeks, and do you really feel like they're effective in improving the game?
Yeah, I absolutely think that bye weeks are effective in helping your team get ready. And in the locker room, bye week is not a word that you hear a whole lot. Really, it's a work week. That's what everybody calls it. That's what the coaches call it. That's what the players call it. We call it a work week because we're coming in and we're going to make sure that we get some work in. We're not coming in to, take our foot off the pedal. We have to get better because we have difficult opponents that are going to be on the other end of that week. And I think that those guys have come in with that mindset in this past week. I think that we have had a lot of guys put in a lot of good work, and I expect that this week we're going to see a lot of improvement in some of the areas that we need coming out of that last game. So I think that it's going to be beneficial for us, and I'm really excited to see some of those improvements get put into action tonight.
Yeah, so when we talked on the phone earlier this week, one of the things that I could tell that you were really passionate about was the Georgia pass rush improving in this game. What have you seen from them so far, and how important are they going to be to getting the victory today?
I think they're going to be critical to a victory today. When we played against Tennessee, we didn't get a whole lot of pass rush. The few times that Aguilar was under pressure, it was because we were sending extra rushers either from the linebacker level or we were sending the secondary. And I don't think that's going to be a sustainable way to get pressure long term during the season. We need to be able to have our front four or, 5 or 6. We need to be able to affect the passer with 5 or 6 or less so that we can have long-term success. Because if we have to send that 7th or 8th man, then we're going to be outnumbered in the secondary with, very talented receiving core that Alabama has, and that's going to not lead to a whole lot of success for us tonight and in the future. So I really hope that we're going to see some effective pass rush today from our front four. If we have to send an extra 1 or 2 from the linebacker level, that's okay too. As long as we still have numbers to match in the secondary, then we can be okay.
And I know that's one of the things that Georgia fans are going to be looking for today too. And I know before the Tennessee games you had 3 bullet points that you said, okay, even if Georgia wins or if they lose, I'll be happy with the outcome as long as I see these things. What are those 3 things for you today?
Yeah, so the pass rush was definitely one of the keys to success for us today. The other one that is going to be really big for me, and once again on the defensive side of the ball, is going to be improved play from the secondary. Our secondary did not do so well in our matchup against Tennessee. We had a lot of one-on-one matchups that we lost, a lot of deep balls where they're trying to take the top off of our defense, and our DBs weren't winning those one-on-one matchups. So I hope to see some improved play from the secondary in this game against Alabama because they've got a very talented receiving core, and they're going to be challenging our secondary all night tonight. So I hope that we can see some improved play from our DBs. And then our third key, at least for me, was to stay committed to the run.
Yeah.
I don't want us to get in a situation where if we see Alabama comes out swinging and throwing haymakers and throwing deep balls left and right, that we feel like we have to match that in order to keep pace. If we commit to the run, it's going to allow our offense to be multidimensional and stay on schedule throughout the course of the game. So I don't want us to abandon the run too early if things don't go our way and we have a slow start. Stay committed to the run, stick with it. Throw some quarterback run in there to keep the defense off balance, and I think that will also allow us to have success tonight as well as throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that because obviously that was something that was absent from Georgia's game against Bama last year. It became a shootout, so the run game essentially wasn't there. And this is the part where we do my Mansell's matchup of the week, and for the first time ever, I have made it an individual player versus Alabama because of something dealing with the run game, and that's going to be Gunnar Stockton versus Alabama's defense. We did some digging on how does Alabama get beat when you look at a lot of Kalen DeBoer's losses. They have come to dual threat quarterbacks. So far, Gunnar this year looked really good in game 1 as a runner. You see his stats there on the screen, 28 for 134 yards. Now that is sack adjusted, a little over 44 rushing yards per game, also 3 rushing touchdowns, which leads Georgia. And I went into games 2 and 3 and said, I don't want to see Gunnar Stockton be Georgia's leading rusher because there are so many versatile guys in that room. However, I'm okay with him doing that today because Alabama has struggled against dual threat quarterbacks, and I thought that the Alabama defensive coordinator, Kane Womack, did a good job of setting that up and how impressed they've been with Gunnar so far. Here's Kane Womack on Gunnar.
I think they do a really good job with Gunnar in the run game. It's just enough to keep you honest. You see the run game at the right time, certainly third downs and red zone, and those are things that will always be the case for offenses. But he's a physical kid. He's tough. He's gritty. He's willing to get the yards in the read game. He makes the right decisions the vast majority of the time. And so, he has certainly brought an element to their run game that, maybe they didn't have as much with Carson a year ago. And I think that's something that, that certainly we're going to have to account for.
So I want to get to the Alabama side of things in just a moment, but just from what you've seen in the first 3 games, what do you think about Gunnar on the ground so far?
Yeah, I love to see Gunnar getting involved in the run game. And we saw a lot of that in our week 1 matchup, but didn't see as much of it in week 2. But then we saw it reintroduced in week 3 against Tennessee. So I definitely think that the game plan needs to be more along the lines of what we saw in weeks 1 and week 3, where he had a good amount of carries. I think he had the second most attempts in the Tennessee game. Maybe not necessarily the yardage was going to reflect that, but at least the carries. So the defense is seeing the ball in his hands when he's taking off, is going to keep them honest, as Bama's defensive coordinator has mentioned there, just enough to keep them honest where they can't overcommit to the handoff, and that will allow us to be successful with our zone read, with our RPOs. It can open up the pass game as well. So I do think we need to see a healthy amount of Gunnar Stockton with the ball in his hands on the ground to keep the defense honest, and that will allow us to have success tonight.
And it's hard for any team to prepare to go up against a dual-threat quarterback. We saw Georgia's defense struggle with Jalen Milroe last year, but also on the other end, Alabama's really struggled with that as well. 4 out of the 5 games they've lost under Kalen DeBoer has come to guys who can also run the ball, with the exception of the Alabama-Michigan game. We're not going to include the bowl game in this, but you see here, looking at some of these losses, Florida State, Castellanos put up 78 yards. Jackson Arnold for Oklahoma, 131. Nico Imaliava, 44. Diego Pavia, 56. And then they didn't lose to South Florida. However, that was the game where they had to score 28 points in the fourth quarter to come back. He put up 108 yards, and with the exception of the Auburn game last year, all of the matchups that Alabama has won, the quarterback has rushed for less than 25 yards. So I do feel like this is one of the advantages that Georgia has today, is you're going to keep the Alabama defense guessing.
Yes, absolutely. If Gunnar can be effective with his legs tonight, keep them off balance, that's going to be a really good sign for us. And then also will be something that we're going to look at, with Alabama down the road as well. I feel like they're always going to kind of be on the radar. It's always a team that you have to look out for in the SEC and the national, in the playoff conversation. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle dual-threat quarterbacks beyond this weekend as well, moving into the rest of the season.
So, of course, we're going to hear from you in the post-game show later, but just one final thought from you, the one thing that you want DawgNation to know about what they're going to see tonight.
I want DawgNation to show up and show out and be in full support of the team tonight. Win, lose, or draw, like our coaches would always say, win, lose, or draw, you got to show up for your team. So be loud, be early, and make sure that the Dogs can hear you tonight, and make sure that Alabama knows that we're here to stay, and make sure that you have an impact on the game tonight.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to see you on the post-game show. Hopefully we'll have lots of good things to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to seeing you for the post-game show tonight.
All right, so we've got Connor Riley on standby. He's going to be live from Sanford Stadium. We'll talk all things offensive line as well as cornerbacks. But for now, this is DawgNation Game Day. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Hey, DawgNation, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily here at Cercheros. And when I'm ready to eat, I want to eat something that I feel like was made fresh for me. And that's what the friendly folks at Cercheros do each and every day. In fact, let me give you a little bit of a taste of what that looks like right now. So I'll do a flour tortilla with Southwest rice, black beans. May I have steak, please? Cheese, and some pico, and some corn. I would love that grilled, absolutely. Can't beat the taste of those fresh grilled toppings added on. Jalapenos, some guac. The guac is free add-on here at Cercheros. And then I'll do some Cercheros sauce too, please. Looks great. And this football season, I want you to think of Cercheros for your tailgate watching and game day party need. In fact, this year, DawgNation with Cercheros is going to give away the ultimate game day party. You go to the website, DawgNation.com/tailgate. You can register for your chance to win the ultimate game day party, courtesy of Cercheros.
Nothing makes a house feel more like a home than quality windows. So trust the professionals at Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll equip your home with energy-efficient windows and doors just right for you. Schedule your free in-home, no-pressure consultation. Get product samples, installation options, and a free quote. Log on to PellaGA.com and visit our new Experience Center in Duluth. Tell them Brandon Adams sent you. Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Yeah.
This is DawgNation Game Day, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors, Kroger, R.S. Andrews, and Jittery Joes Coffee.
All right, and welcome back. This is DawgNation Game Day. I'm Kaylee Mansell. There it is. You've got a time-lapse shot of the field. Now, I'm curious to see how different it's going to look here in just about an hour and a half. We've talked so much about what this atmosphere entails, getting to have this game at night. This really does feel like the calm before the storm. And so now we actually have Connor Riley. He's going to join us to let us know what that atmosphere kind of looks like right now. So Connor, obviously a big deal deal has been made of this game being played at home. I don't think I've seen Athens like this all year long. Can you just tell us what the vibe has been like so far, and are people starting to flood into Sanford yet?
Yeah, the vibe is a little bit on pause right now. There's been a lightning strike detected within 15 miles of Sanford Stadium. And so what that means is that they don't have to leave the stadium just yet. It's once it strikes within 8 miles. And so that is something that we are at least monitoring the situation right now. We're still far enough out from the proposed kickoff time. I think 7:37 is what it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer to 7:45. That it hasn't impacted things yet, but it's certainly a situation to monitor with weather. It looks like potentially being an issue. It's looked like it might be clear, but right now there was a lightning strike recently within 15 miles of Sanford Stadium.
And I do want to ask one more weather question, because as I was coming into Athens, it was absolutely monsooning. What do the conditions of the field look like? And if it is a little bit soggy out there, how does that change the game plan for both teams?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's rained too much within Sanford Stadium, so Georgia and Alabama might be okay in that sense. But you heard Kirby Smart talk earlier this week about that Alabama-Florida State game. And one thing he did not fully take into account when just sort of rough watching it earlier were the weather conditions and how that obviously impacted Alabama in that game. And, you know, given what we've seen, especially I think with Alabama and how much we think they're going to have to throw the ball in this game, I do think that a negative weather thing might impact them a little bit more than Georgia, who wants to and will lean on their running game.
Yeah, obviously the run game is going to be a really important part today for Georgia. I think that's where they hold the advantage. But speaking of advantages, I feel like when we saw Georgia lose to Alabama last year, the advantage was the receivers that they had just seemed miles ahead of what Georgia's guys looked like. Of course, drop passes were a really big issue last year, and we saw Colby Young miss that ball towards the end. However, this was a problem that Georgia addressed really well in the offseason by bringing in Zachariah Branch as well as Noah Thomas, and then a lot of guys from the 2025 recruiting class. At this point in the season, do you think that maybe this is the first time that Georgia has had better receivers than Alabama?
I'm not quite willing to go that far because Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard are very, very great players. But I do think that Georgia has made up the gap that existed there between Alabama and Georgia recent years with what has been there at wide receiver. Colby Young has been a great improvement in what he's brought to this team. Zachariah Branch, an explosive play waiting to happen, and someone Alabama's absolutely going to have to make sure they're aware of this week. So I'm not quite ready to say yet that Alabama has been surpassed by Georgia in the wide receiver room. Keep an eye out for Isaiah Horton, a big body transfer from Miami who could do some damage tonight. But I do think that Georgia has made things a little bit closer.
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan Williams as well as Jeremy Bernard. Ryan Williams was the star for Alabama last year. He did miss some games this year, which really opened up the floodgates for Jeremy Bernard to become a star on the rise. And when we talked about this game over the summer, I thought that they might take a one-on-one approach for Ryan Williams, putting Georgia's best on him. However, now that you've got Jeremy on the other side, I think it changes things up. The cornerbacks really struggled against Tennessee. They're going to face a very similar offense today. What do you think is the best strategy for the Georgia secondary to really lock down Alabama's best receivers?
Have Georgia's pass rush get home. It was not much of a factor against Tennessee. They're going to need to do a much better job of pressuring Ty Simpson than they did Joey Aguilar 2 weeks ago. Now, you're going to have the home crowd behind you. You would hope that that makes an impact for what you're able to do. Georgia's pass rush has to shorten the time that Ty Simpson has to get back there and pick a team apart, because if he's got a lot of time to throw, it doesn't matter how great Ellis Robinson, Dalen Everett, Daniel Harris play. Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard are good enough to get open. And so I think how Georgia's secondary is improved in this game is tied to how well Georgia rushes the passer.
And it's crazy to think that the pressure feels like it's on Georgia's defense at this point in the season. The first two games, it was really on the offensive line. And in the 3 games that they've played, we've seen 3 different versions of a starting lineup for Georgia's offensive line. No Ernest Green today. They're going to get Juan Gaston back. What does the best version of this offensive line look like to you?
I do think when everyone's healthy, Ernest Green is a part of it, but he's obviously not playing tonight. And so Georgia's going to have to, I think, find a way to scrape it together. I think Bo Hughley is going to get the start for Georgia tonight at right tackle. Played well in the second half against Austin Peay. One of the heroes in the win over Tennessee, I think, with how he came in and sort of stabilized that right side of the offensive line. I'll be interested in seeing how they mix in Juan Gaston, because I think he's going to play both guard and tackle, and what you see from him. Obviously, they have sky-high expectations for what Gaston might be able to do, but again, working his way back from multiple ankle injuries, you wonder what his stamina and conditioning level might be. I think that this is a huge game for Bo Hughley in terms of showing what he can do at that right tackle spot. For whatever reason, Georgia has been hesitant to put him out there, but I think with what you saw against Tennessee and with Ernest Green being out completely tonight, that's what they're ultimately going to deal with.
All right, so last thing, because I know you've got to get to the Greg Sankey interview, I want to look at this from the big picture perspective. One of the things that we touched on our Thursday night show, Dog Nation at Large, was the optics versus the reality of this game. What does a Georgia win say about this team tonight, and what can it do for them in the future?
I think, one, this game, I think more than anyone on this field, it means a lot for Kirby Smart, because I think you pretty clearly go from, okay, he had a Nick Saban problem to he just has an Alabama problem. And the first one you can kind of excuse. The second one I think becomes much more difficult to talk about. We talk so much about Georgia being a young football team this year. The number 54% of these guys are their first or second year at the University of Georgia. If you're able to get through this month of September with a road win over Tennessee and a home win over Alabama, I think that sets this team up so well for the future, where you saw Florida State lose last night. You saw Georgia Tech very nearly lose. If you can keep stacking wins, especially in the early part of the season, that gives you a massive room for margin of error. And I think that speaks volumes about what this team ultimately could be, because, again, I've always believed this team is going to get better over the course of the season.
And one more thing, now that I'm getting a really good look at you, I see that you have a tie on. Did you feel like you had to get extra dressed up for a game of this stature? Is that what it is?
No, I'm just wearing this in honor of a friend, something he would do often, so just sort of leaning into that.
Well, you look nice. I can't wait to see you in person here shortly. And, of course, you know that Connor's going to be putting up his thoughts throughout the entire game on DawgNation.com. So, Connor, we'll see you here in just a little bit.
Yep, thanks, Kaylee.
All right, and of course you can watch me and Connor every Thursday on our show Dog Nation at Large, 7 o'clock. It's a lot of football. It's also a lot of fun, and I got to give Connor credit because that was a really nice tie. I don't know if I've seen him this dressed up at this point in the season. So I had the chance to sit down with Jeff Sentell earlier this week because Georgia hasn't had that big home game yet, so the recruiting visitors list, very slim. That is not the case at all tonight. There's a lot of guys where Georgia and Alabama are their top priority schools, and they're coming to see both. The fans will play a huge role in how these guys see the home field advantage for Sanford Stadium. So I talked with Jeff about the most important visitors, and also could today be Noah Thomas's time. Here's more with Jeff Sentell. So, Jeff, big game means a big visitors list. Perhaps this is the biggest one for Georgia this season. Who are the three most important visitors who will be attending this game?
I'm going to do a little bit of interesting flavor here. I'm going to do one 2026, one 2027, and one 2028.
That's great.
That feels like what we should do. As much as I want to say first game this year for Jared Curtis, I don't really think Jared Curtis's recruiting is in doubt. He just wants to maybe see the team he's playing with. The name I'm going to circle here is Jared J. Dowdy. This is a guy that we've chronicled his story. He was 240 at the beginning of his junior year. Now he's over 300. So he's no longer an undersized offensive lineman. He's a big dude, 6'6", 300 plus with great feet. Alabama really wants him. And as we said earlier this week on Before the Hedges, I think Alabama might be the team to beat, but Georgia's right in that boxing ring as well for him. So this is an impressionable visit because it's not an official yet. His official will come later. He will take an official to Alabama later. So for one of those positions, tackle, Kaylee, that's what we talk about each and every Wednesday. Georgia needs offensive tackles. They can never have enough of it, offensive tackles. I hope every recruiting show that talks about their recruits anywhere in the country, I hope they're also saying tackles are really hard to find. So I think that's the guy in 2026. 2027's by household name by now, DJ Jacobs, 5-star edge. He's a legacy. If he would choose Georgia, I think his brother would too. So his brother is also a top 100 recruit in 2028. But I can't say that's the 2028. The 2028, Kaylee, everybody loves to talk about quarterback. Jaden Wade, the number one quarterback in the country for 2028. Georgia has already treated him like a VIP for years now in his recruitment. He's just a 2028. That would be ideal class separation between Jared Curtis and Jaden Wade. So I think that's a 2028 with a strong honorable mention here to McKeecher and safety Casey Varner.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks, you and I have done a lot of discussion on Gunnar Stockton, and even after the first two games where it feels like fans weren't completely sold. You were the one to say just wait because you'd seen him more than anyone at this point. It feels like after Tennessee, that's not the conversation anymore. Do you feel like Georgia fans are finally satisfied with where Gunnar Stockton is at this point?
So, Kaylee, one of the things I like about being a reporter is questions are not just, I want to know what you think so I can put it in a story. Questions are supposed to inspire discussion. And for me, if Gunnar Stockton plays well and Georgia beats Alabama, I think isn't that it? Isn't it all questions answered? Is the love affair, is the Gunnar train fully going like one of those Tokyo bullet trains in Japan? I mean, if Gunnar walks on water, goes through all that, and completes that ball to Mr. Humphreys, and then he finds a way to give Georgia another W in the win column against Alabama, plays well doing it, hasn't he done enough?
Yeah.
I mean, will Dog Nation fall in love with him? What do you think?
I mean, it certainly leaves a legacy that a lot of other Georgia quarterbacks have not been able to do in the past. And you told us on Before the Hedges earlier this week that you thought this was one of the first times where Georgia had the better quarterback than Alabama, despite the fact that Ty Simpson was a former 5-star. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a game for Gunnar to where the satisfaction level is already there, but he gets written in a different light if he's the one that's finally able to beat Bama. Now, in terms of satisfaction, someone that I don't feel like has met the expectations of what you and I would have thought, but simply because maybe the opportunity hasn't been there up to this point, is the transfer wide receiver Noah Thomas, who came from Texas A&M. At least for me, and I hope that you could speak on this too, I think that he's one of the players where maybe we see him finally have his moment in this game with Colby Young. He played in this game last year, and I think he put a lot of the blame on himself. Colby Young back, but it's going to be really hard for Alabama to defend both Colby Young, Zachariah Branch, and this is where Noah Thomas comes in because we really haven't seen that much of him. I feel like he could be one of the players that finally steps into the spotlight and has that big moment today.
Nice piece of video right there. Kaylee, I'm going to pull out some receipts, the proverbial Dog Nation receipts. I, more than anybody on the Dog Nation staff, spoke very glowingly of Noah Thomas. I remember we had discussions back in February, March, April. My predicted offensive MVP for this team was Noah Thomas. Kaylee, this is the game that you bring Noah Thomas out of the transfer portal from Texas A&M for. This is the game he came to Georgia. And if you remember last year, Georgia was knocking on the door, trying to get the ball to Colby Young against the same corners that will probably be on the field in tight situations on Saturday night. And they kept trying to feed that ball to Colby Young. Well, Georgia kind of has two players like that now. Mm-hmm. So if Alabama wants to put their former 5-star Xavier Brown on Colby Young on those jump balls, then who's going to deal with Noah Thomas on the other side or down the field on another part of the field? I think I can easily say this, Kaylee. If Noah Thomas does not have a big game and big moments against Alabama, I think that preseason offensive MVP pick is not going to give me a great return on investment. I think he's really talented. I think he has the ability to take over games, and I think this is the game where you need to see great play and great clutch performances by Noah Thomas.
Continuing on the subject of wide receivers, Georgia has done well with receivers when it comes to the transfer portal, and they had a really strong 2025 class, but for Alabama, they just seem to always reload with a 5-star wide receiver. I mean, since Nick Saban was there, it's even continued into now. We're going to see it with Ryan Williams today. How does Bama continue to acquire these elite wide receivers? Why has Georgia not have been able to? And is this somewhere where like Georgia in the future can finally start doing something like this where there's always that elite 5-star receiver?
I think it has a lot to do with tradition and pedigree, Kaylee. First of all, I got to insert a joke here about they don't have any more 17-year-old receivers on the field, right?
Yeah.
Probably not. But what I'll say is this. The reason why Alabama attracts all these receivers, it's Jaden Waddle. It's Devonta Smith. It is Julio Jones. The list goes on and on. It's Jerry Jeudy. It's Calvin Ridley. Like, it has been an assembly line of wide receivers for Alabama. Georgia's just kind of getting started on that. I think Zach Branch is going to be one of those guys that goes first round, second round. And again, Georgia did get a 5-star, their first 5-star since George Pickens and Tylan Taylor. I think it's starting. That train is starting. A lot of it has to do with James Coley and the way he recruits the wide receiver position. So, Georgia doesn't have to deal with a 17-year-old receiver anymore. Ryan Williams is really talented. He finally kind of got back healthy after really not having a big game. Most people that are just kind of surface-level college football fans, they won't realize that prior to the Wisconsin game, the last really big game Ryan Williams had was against Georgia in Tuscaloosa. So I think Georgia having its, weaponry at cornerback, Dalen Everett, I think, will draw him this year, and not how Georgia tried to guard him last year, and players that are no longer on this roster tried to guard him last year. It'll be very interesting. But I think in the future, I would say with all these receivers coming around, especially what we're seeing in the 2026 class, I don't think the gap between wide receiver talent will be as pronounced between Bama and Georgia in the years to come. And I kind of feel pretty good about saying that.
Well, I'm glad that somebody snuck in the 18-year-old joke. I was hoping someone would. Of course, that is you. So thanks, Jeff.
See you, Kelly.
All right, so you guys know that I do a Wednesday night show with Jeff before the hedges. It's our recruiting show. And I think in spending so much time with Jeff, maybe I've fallen for the Noah Thomas propaganda, because he'll come up in my players to watch later. But now it's time for our Kroger Dog Walk, so we can get a first look at the players as they arrive into Sanford Stadium on what could potentially be the biggest home game of the season.
Welcome into Dog Nation's coverage of the Dog Walk. Cody Chafin's in with you as the Dogs make their way into Sanford Stadium for the huge showdown tonight with Alabama. Lawson Lucky, Cash Jones, how about London Humphreys also making his way in, the star and the hero of the Tennessee game. There he is, Raylan Wilson, Dalen Everett right behind him as more Dogs make their way, and there is the man of the hour, QB1 Gunnar Stockton. Coming in, he's got 7 total touchdowns, thrown for 4, run for 3 so far this year. How will he do tonight? And another tough test against Alabama. Here comes big C.J. Wilson, middle linebacker for the Dogs, making his way in right now. Got the beautiful luggage he's carrying in as well. Kirby Smart on the other side with Jordan Big Baby Hall walking through your picture. Big Noah Thomas. Is this the night Noah Thomas breaks out? He's drawn some huge penalties. Can he get his first touchdown as a Dog? Micah Morris, big right or left guard. Could he play right guard? Where could he play tonight? He's lined up all over the place so far this season. There's Monroe Freeling. We know he'll be on the left side, holding down left tackle. Big tackle for the Dogs right there. And Oscar Delp making his way in. Delp speaking with the media this week. He knows what's on the line here. Has yet to beat Alabama in his Georgia career. There you go, Zachariah Branch also making his way in. You can tell when the cameras are out. That's number 1, Zachariah Branch, coming into the stadium right now. Dogs and Alabama, J.J. Hannay, there he is. Freshman defensive end coming in for Georgia. Big Christian Miller making his way in. He heard the blackout rumors. He's in all black as he walks into the stadium tonight. Elijah Griffin, the freshman, making his way past the screen right now. There's KJ Bolden on the far side. What can number 4 do on this defense? Limit Ty Simpson and the Alabama offense tonight. You just hear the music. It is bumping. Chris Cole, what can he do for Georgia? Best pass rusher so far this season. Are more sacks in order for number 9 tonight. Glenn Schumann, what has he got dialed up for this Georgia defense? He comes into your screen right now. Here they come in. A lot of Dogs in black tonight. Michael Uni right there coming right through your screen. On the far side, you've got Ellis Robinson making his way in. All right. All of this brought to you by Kroger today. Be sure to stock up for your next tailgate or just fill up on those fuel points at your local Kroger. There's Juan Gaston coming in. Kroger giving us everything we need for game day. Justin Williams in the red suit tonight. Enjoy seeing that. And Mike Bobo, offensive coordinator, making his way in for Georgia as he got some tricks up his sleeve. C.J. Wiley, you just saw come through, freshman wide receiver for the Dogs, as we get some of the youngsters still making their way in. How about Roderick Robinson? Is that tonight the night for number 0? Can he get out there, get some totes, find his way into this end zone? He's in right now. Dogs and Tide coming up. Talon Taylor, the true freshman wide receiver, the 5-star. Can he have a breakout night? Number 11 tonight. We will see. All right, that's going to do it for the dog walk. Kaylee, I'll send it back to you.
I mean, shout out to Cody Chaffins for taking on the dog walk. Brandon Adams does such an amazing job, but I definitely think that Cody may have broken the record for the amount of dogs named within the dog walk. What a clutch performance by Cody Chaffins. Also, Kroger comes in clutch on all your game day needs, whether it's pre-made platters, snacks, or those beverages to help keep you prepared for the rest of the day. You can shop at your local Kroger or visit online at Kroger.com. So I think in games like this, even though it's still early in the season, big games have big players that make big moments. Think about the Texas games last year with Etienne and Dalen Everett. Think Brock Bowers versus Auburn in 2023, or even London Humphreys last week for Tennessee. For today's matchup, I think that there could potentially be 3 players where that day is finally the day, and we go on tonight's post-game show and we talk about the monster performances that they had. So these are my 3 players where I feel like maybe today could finally be their big moment. It starts with Dalen Everett. And listen, he missed game 1, came back for games 2 and 3. And I think when you look at cornerbacks specifically, it's when you're not talking about them that you know that they're doing a good job. And we're not talking about Dalen Everett, so you know he's locking it down on one side. I want him to be the one to cause Ty Simpson's first interception. As you can see on the screen there, he had the team high interceptions in 2024, and across this entire team, he's had the most total starts. So he knows what it's like to be in these big games, not let the nerves get to him, and he's so good in coverage, and we're going to see a very similar offense to what we did 2 weeks ago with Tennessee. And so it just feels like this could finally be the day where we see potentially a Dalen Everett interception or a Dalen Everett sack like we did in that first regular season game against Texas. So for me, it starts with the guy who's got by far the most experience on this team, and that's Dalen Everett. We're going to keep it going with the defense, and this is probably the one that feels like a long shot, but maybe there was some foreshadowing of this earlier in the week. We've talked a lot about the pass rush, and we're going to talk about it some more here in just a moment, but we got the chance to hear from Quintavious Johnson this week, and I think they are very selective with the players that they choose to bring to the conference for big games like this, especially like Alabama. Q Johnson hasn't done that much so far this season, but he was one of the darlings of fall camp last year, also this past year, but we haven't seen him reach that full potential, at least the one that we've been led to believe he has. He wasn't the highest rated signee of the 2024 class, but he proved himself within 2 fall camps. I thought that Kirby did a really good job of explaining why Q Johnson is one of those players who adapted so quickly and what he does well. Here's Kirby Smart on Quintavious Johnson.
Yeah, confidence and leadership. He's very open to criticism. He accepts when he messes up. I love that about the kid. He's not one that makes excuses. He's not one that goes back and tries to weasel his way out of things. He owns up to it and says, hey, I can do better. And he has. He's grown as a person, player. And, he had a really tough injury at the end of the spring, and he overcame that. And still, he's all the way back, but he's playing well.
So obviously high remarks from Kirby Smart about Q Johnson. He was one of the freshmen that got really involved on the special teams last year. We've seen him more in the pass rush up to this point, but just hasn't done anything that's really stood out amongst the rest. But we know that the pass rush is going to be so important today. So I'm looking to a player like Q Johnson to really add some pressure on Ty Simpson, hopefully add another sack to this team, only 4 on the year so far. So definitely somebody I'll be keeping my eye out for today. And then the last one, and it's Noah Thomas, and I think we've had this conversation before. There's still a chance for him to be the player that we know he's capable of, and we know he's capable of it because he did it at Texas A&M. Alabama has a really good secondary, but Georgia also just has a lot of weapons in the wide receiver room, and maybe today is that day because we haven't seen as much of Noah Thomas. You see there just 3 receptions for 24 yards, 0 touchdowns, only 5 targets this year so far, him and Colby Young essentially do the same thing. We've seen more of Colby Young, but maybe there is an advantage in not seeing Noah Thomas as much at this point in the season anyway. If it doesn't happen today, I'm not writing him off just yet, but the questions around him will begin to happen. And as someone that has so much XCC experience and also just the height of him, maybe we see him do what Georgia couldn't do last year, and that's get those 50-50 balls in the end zone. So Noah Thomas, so much potential. I hope we see him capitalize on it today. But I talked to Cody Chaffins earlier this week with the Boots on the Ground segment, and he thinks that there's another Georgia wide receiver who we could see make the difference in today's game. And now it's time for Boots on the Ground with our good friend Cody Chaffins, who does an excellent job of bringing us behind-the-scenes footage. We've got some past videos to show you that could all play important parts in today's matchup against Alabama. The first one is a guy that could be looking to redeem himself in this game.
Yeah, this is a piece of video that I hadn't used at all since shooting last year's Alabama game. Thought it wasn't real cool at the time to put this man on blast, but I think this is the time now. We can take a look at it. Colby Young coming off the field at Bryant-Denny Stadium a year ago, and there are tears in this man's eyes. He, of course, was involved on that last play where Carson Beck was throwing one up to him in the end zone. He could not knock the ball down, and Alabama intercepts. He's got a staffer telling him to keep his chin up. But you can tell how much that loss meant to him. So there's been talk all week about what the game means to Kirby Smart and to Georgia fans. And part of it, I think this Alabama rivalry, does it hold as much weight to the players as it does the fans? Well, most of the players hadn't been at Georgia very long. Kirby Smart's given out the stat of 54% are first or second years. But this has some history for this man right here, number 8, Colby Young. So it'll be interesting to see how Kirby Smart can go about harnessing that. How do you get the guys motivated based off of the way they felt walking off the field at Bryant-Denny Stadium, or I guess Saban Field as it was called last year, how he can use that to get them motivated tonight.
And the thing about Colby Young is he's been great through the first 3 games. I don't think he has to prove himself to anybody, but he might want to prove to his own self that he is capable of making big plays in a big game like Alabama.
Yes, I would love to see maybe throw him up another ball in the end zone. Maybe that's how he gets his touchdown.
And I feel like Kirby is definitely the kind of guy that would do that for him, especially seeing the emotion from last year. I think a really important part of this game, especially when you have 2 teams that the talent is evenly matched up, it comes back to the basics. One of those being special teams.
Yeah, so my second Boots on the Ground comes from the Tennessee game this year. Brett Thorson back kicking for Georgia. And it was after one of his punts, actually a punt that Tennessee had muffed briefly, and Georgia almost got on, but it's Kirk Benedict who is the special teams coach, and Thorson going over things. It was interesting. I asked Brett Thorson, because he was made available to the media this week, what are those conversations like? And he said, all right, we wanted to see how they were rushing us, what formation they were in, how much hang time we got, did we do everything right? So they're always looking at that kind of stuff, but this is the kind of game where that third phase will come into play. If you're going to have the preseason All-SEC guys, they swept the special teams category. Brett Thorson, Peyton Woodring, even Bo Gardner, the long snapper, Zachariah Branch as your returner. That phase can make a difference on a night like tonight. We're expecting a really tight game, and Georgia takes it very seriously, obviously, with Brett Thorson right there going over that punt. But it kind of gets us to talking about this phase of the game tonight. Georgia can win special teams. That's going to go a long way.
I also think this is just really good perspective and insight as well, because I wouldn't say that being a punter is necessarily like the sexiest position on the field. Like, everybody wants to be a skill player. Kickers play a really big role, but you don't necessarily look at punting as something that, okay, you need to study and realize what just happened. How can you get better moving forward? So the fact that he's a veteran on this team and is so consistent, but still finding ways to improve his own game.
Yeah, never pleased with how things are going. He always wants to be a little bit better. Gotta love that.
So for the first time in the Kirby Smart era, Alabama is playing in Sanford Stadium as a night game. We know that the atmosphere is going to be crazy. And it starts with a flame, I believe.
Yeah, so we're seeing all these things. Last year we saw the fireworks come out for the first time. We do know that the bracelets are coming out, but if you're maybe not been to a game, even if you have been, you may have missed this because the day games, this year they have added flames to the dogs running out of the tunnel. So they pull this out in front of us and they do the flames. It's not much during the day. Like this was from the Marshall game. It looks kind of cool, but I can only imagine what it's going to look like tonight. Between that and the red lights on the bracelet, it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. I love that they keep adding, right? Like last year, the fireworks, that could have been enough. But they even do like the smoke bombs kind of during the day games now, in addition to the fireworks. But I like the flames out there. I'm just thinking now about that moment, not too long from now, when Georgia comes out of that tunnel and those flames are going off and that's going to pop on the night sky.
I think the last time I could remember seeing something like this was at the SEC championship. And even though that fire looks small, you can feel that in the crowd, like the warmth coming off of it too. And it's probably going to be a little bit chilly on Saturday night. So I think fans are not only going to enjoy seeing it, but feeling the effects of it too.
Yeah, and if the fans can be a part of this game, I think everybody said it all week. Even Thorson said, if we can get a false start or two. Again, little things in this game are going to make a difference. Fans can make the difference, and the Athletic Association doing their part at least to get everybody motivated, make it feel like a big-time atmosphere.
Well, Cody, we appreciate your hard work, and for more Boots on the Ground, you can check out Cody Chaffins and Mike Griffith on the Beat, Mondays at 7 o'clock. So we're getting real close to Georgia running through the flames, feeling it on the field. We've got kickoff coming up so soon. So as we begin to wrap up, you know what that means. It's time for Kaylee's Keys. All right, so my keys today, very simple. First one, we've talked about it all show long. It involves the run game. You've got to win the ground game. Didn't see that at all from Georgia last year. Got in a scenario where they couldn't run the ball. I believe this is where Georgia has the biggest advantage in today's game. As you see there, Alabama only averaging 123.7 rushing yards per game. Georgia only rushed for 80 yards against Alabama in 2024. But Georgia just has such a diverse running back room. Everybody's got a certain role. There's so much versatility. You could really keep the Alabama defense guessing with what's next from each back, whether it's Nate Frazier, Josh McCray, Dwight Phillips Jr., Chauncey Bowens, and a Gunnar Stockton. I believe on paper the advantage is already there. I know they get Jam Miller back, but with a collarbone injury, not sure if he's going to go 100%. On paper, better running backs. On paper, better rushing stats. So winning the ground game, super important for the Dogs today. On the defensive side of the ball, it's something Rodrigo Blankenship and I talked about, and that is the Georgia pass rush. You've got to put the pressure on Ty Simpson. Really couldn't do it against Joey Aguilar. We saw how that affected the rest of the game. And going back and watching that Alabama-Florida State game, Simpson was sacked 3 times in that loss. Florida State, 29 pressures in that game. Also, really important to note, when Ty Simpson was under pressure on 37% of his dropbacks in the game, on those plays, only 3 of 14 for 68 yards. So we know he struggles against it. We haven't seen a terrific pass rush from Georgia, but if they can do that, they're going to help out in all parts of the game, get those sacks up. The fact that there's only 4 this year so far, got to see those numbers go up, especially with the talent that Georgia has at the edge position. But I thought that former Georgia linebacker Davin Bellamy did a really great job of telling us how it's got to get better, how it impacts today's game. This is Davin Bellamy.
Through these last 3 games, we haven't seen the pass rush be there consistently. So last week we didn't see a lot of, pressure from Coach Smart just because of the things that, Tennessee does. And we tried to rely on just our front 7 getting there, and we saw how that turned out. So I'm expecting this week, especially with Bama, they're coming in. They don't have any turnovers this year. Their quarterback is playing very well, and they also have those deep threat targets that we struggle with. So this week, I see, Coach Smart probably, heating it up a little bit because our front 7 is just not, getting there. And I think that's just the best way. You kind of want to see it be on tape. I think the only guy who's really showed that he can consistently get after the quarterback is Chris Cole. But we haven't even seen that at a, high clip. Man, the question's still out there, but I think to, combat that, you have to send pressure. We have to send pressure. If we can't get there with 4, then we got to get there with 5 and 6.
Obviously, it's a coaching choice, but to send that pressure out there, help out your secondary, also take away some of that run game too. You can't stress it enough how important it's going to be, and the pass rush has to get better overall. What we've seen from Chris Cole at this point, I think we can be satisfied there, but with other players like Gabe Harris and Quintavious Johnson, you just have to get more out of them. So I think the pass rush is going to be really important in today's game, especially early on. Throw them off their game, and I think if Georgia comes out with a win, we're going to be talking about how excellent the pass rush was. So close to game time, it's almost like I can feel it in the air when we've done some of these tape videos. I've kind of just been watching everyone. They're flocking to the stadium right now. I'm so excited to finally get into there so I can experience the feeling of Sanford Stadium at nighttime.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement that it's louder at night than day.
Everyone knows, you don't lose at home at Georgia. That's the standard, and we want to uphold that.
This game is between the hedges, a place that Georgia has not lost since the 2019 season, the nation's longest home winning streak.
The fans create the atmosphere.
The home field advantage in this game will be a huge factor.
Maybe it's a few false starts from their offense. Getting that little edge can be a huge part in a game that's going to be this close.
I know the atmosphere is going to be pretty crazy, feeling the support from the fans.
The atmosphere helps, the crowd noise helps. Night games are a little more rowdy.
That is one of the best hype videos I think that DawgNation has done. So big kudos to Cody Chaffins on that. I cannot wait to see what it looks like tonight, what it feels like tonight. And as we wrap up here, I do have some final thoughts that I want to share. And I think back to last year's game against Alabama, how confident I felt going into it, and then coming out on the other side with a loss. In that moment, it felt catastrophic because we were on such a high of having a quarterback come back, and it finally felt like maybe Georgia had that talent advantage. There was no Nick Saban, and it was tough for everyone to watch, for everyone to experience. But in the end, it never really mattered. Georgia still went on to win the SEC championship, went on to make the playoff. Alabama didn't do either of those things. So if that's the way things go tonight, just know that there is so much time left in this football season. However, as we sit here now, I do feel a certain level of optimism because you look at this game on paper, the players that Georgia has, their strength so far in the season, and it just feels like all the cards are lining up for Georgia to get the victory today, especially with this game being at home and knowing that in the games that really matter the most, that's when Sanford is at its best. Tennessee game last year, I think the crowd was such an important part in that, as well as the Georgia Tech game. So when it really matters, Sanford is one of the toughest places to play, and not just the SEC, but college football. And we've seen that with the home win streak. I really hope Georgia has the opportunity to do that again tonight, continue the streak. Don't want to see it into Alabama, but whatever the result is, how incredible is it to know that we get to experience the magnitude of such an important regular season game together, get to experience the emotions of what it's like to be a Georgia fan. I don't really care to see an instant classic. I would rather it be a blowout, but if that's what it comes to, then you know what? We'll be there for the entire ride, and hopefully when I see you guys during the DawgNation post game, we'll be talking about a Georgia win. But if it doesn't go their way, there's still time for them to do what they did last year. And if they win, oh my gosh, the city of Athens might be lit on fire tonight, and I cannot wait to see it. I can't wait to experience it. So DawgNation, thank you so much for joining us every week for DawgNation Game Day. I'll see you after the game at DawgNation post game. And with that, I will give you a Go Dogs.